Welcome to In Presence We Trust, a podcast about the art and heart of holding group transformational spaces. I'm Rachel Rickards, founder of the Field Facilitator Training. In Presence We Trust is a sanctuary for aspiring and experienced facilitators seeking to evolve their craft in embodied leadership. In this episode, I speak with Rick Smith. Rick is the best-selling author of Conscious Classroom Management, a book that has reached nearly 500,000 readers, impacting facilitators, educators, and students worldwide. His approach provides practical and accessible methods for navigating both inner and outer challenges with tenderness and grace. At the heart of Rick's work lies the belief that love is unconditional, despite the fact that life gives us conditions. In the conversation you're about to hear, Rick discusses his journey from teaching teachers to facilitating retreats. We explore what awakened leadership is, focusing on presence, inner authority, and authenticity. Rick shares his insights on what it means to hold space without holding. And we discuss the difference between teaching the what and the how, emphasizing vulnerability and self-acceptance in facilitation. If you're ready to begin, join me by taking a deep breath. Rick is tuning in from Bali. I'm in the Azores, so we were also just laughing that there might be dogs barking in the background, or cicadas, or wind blowing. It's two small islands here that we're tuning in from today.
I wouldn't put it past the roosters to be squawking at night.
So Rick is a really interesting character. He has written a book called Conscious Classroom Management. He's now also a group facilitator, retreat leader, but you started out as kind of teaching teachers. And I'm really curious, like I'd love to, before we fully dive in, just hit some of those points of the arc of your journey from teaching teachers to now the awakened leadership group spaces and trainings that you're holding, and just to understand a little bit of how that came to be.
Sure, thanks. I was a school teacher, and I was working with what they call at-risk high school students, kids who failed a bunch of classes. They have an alternate school to catch up. And so classroom management, behavior, motivation were huge things for me. And I came up with some principles and strategies that turned out worked for other teachers in mainstream classrooms. And so I started teaching workshops for local teachers and at conferences, and it got quite popular. And so I quit my day job and became a full-time education consultant, and then in California, and then I spread to the United States and beyond. And then I wrote that book, Conscious Classroom Management. It became a bestseller, and all this happened. I have a company, Conscious Teaching, that's still training teachers. I ended up speaking to well over 100,000 educators over the years. And something in the essence of what I was teaching is what I still bring into the work that I do now. Principles about how to grow into inner authority in the classroom, how to grow into inner authority as a human being. What does it mean to assume the best about students, but assume the best about ourselves and our situations? And those are the kind of the background principles, and also what it means to welcome myself inside of whatever experience I'm having and welcome others. And so those are the pieces that it was kind of like I wove this into working with teachers, but I never named it. And I like naming it more directly and being more overt, like, hey, I'm about unconditionally welcoming ourselves, and let's get into that, rather than couching it in education speak. So yeah, it's different now.
Yeah, beautiful. And now what you'll be joining us. Rick has been primarily living in Bali for more or less the last 10 years. And now he'll be venturing over to the European shores to grace us with his presence. And I'm really excited to be hosting you. And you'll be teaching or offering awakened leadership retreat. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit about, like, what is awakened leadership?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And every time, of course, right? And every time I answer, it's a different answer. So
perfect. It's great.
So here we go. The more I teach awaken, I've taught probably 15 retreats, mostly in Bali, but elsewhere as well, called Awaken Leadership. And the more I teach it, the more I'm seeing that it's redundant. Awakening and leadership are the same thing. Awakening is about deep listening, following the impulse. And leadership is about deep listening and following the impulse. That vulnerability or authenticity is the only real power. Everything else around performance or impressing people is where I'm basing my sense of self on what the audience or what the team feels about me. So I'm giving them my power. That's performance versus expression, where I'm in my, call it center, my inner authority, expressing myself. And yes, of course, I want to be liked and all that stuff, but I'm in myself, and so I'm empowered. And this is not just as a facilitator or as a leader, but it's how I order food on the menu, how I am in the supermarket, how I am driving my car by myself. It's just a quality of welcoming all of myself, all the parts that traditional leadership were supposed to squelch and repress and put them down so that we can lead, but that's exhausting and it's no fun.
Yeah.
And so I'm much more interested in basically business as usual is killing us. It's not working. And business as usual is about performing leadership, whether it's, again, in front of a group or just by myself. And so I'm much more interested in the authentic kind of qualities that are available. And the more I explore authenticity, the more I'm seeing that it's like an infinite rabbit hole. It goes into very deep places of mysticism and aliveness and practical applications as I'm willing to it's so trite, to be myself, to notice and welcome the parts of myself that are knocking on the door wanting to be loved. Okay, I welcome them. And all of this is encapsulated in Awaken Leadership. And the course, the training is 6 full days, and we look at presentation as a doorway into presence. That's the first thing. So people get up in front, but it's not about public speaking. It's about dropping into presence with 20 or 30 pairs of eyes on you. And that's a potent catalyst for becoming self-aware. We do a whole piece called Making Friends with the Noises in Our Heads, which is one of my favorites. Anybody watching have any noises in your heads?
I do.
Right? So, yeah, me too, right? I mean, we started a half an hour late because of the software issue. And I'm like, and you go, Rick, do you want to take a minute? I go, yeah, I just walked away just to settle because, this is really important and we have to get it right and all that. So making friends with the noises in our heads. Then we focus on making friends with money, which is a potent day. It's not finding people who have money and making friends with them. That's not what it means. It's making friends with money as an intelligence, as an aliveness. And then we focus on making friends with death, because death is the one thing we know is coming, and it's the thing we most push away, and it's the doorway into the present moment. And so it's about dropping into presence. We focus on embodiment and gender stuff, and then ultimately it manifests in accessing our genius in the world. And so to me, it's like an arc. We go kind of into the noises in our head and we come out into our genius, and it's a beautiful pathway. The thing about it, let me just jump in one sec. The thing about it that it seems most tender and valuable is this idea of welcoming everything. And we've all been to millions of workshops where they tell us that everything is welcome, but it's not always true. It's rarely true. Or I'll say everything is optional, and I mean it. And I'll remind people every exercise, this is optional, because there's this idea, well, I should do it.
Yeah.
And I when people choose not to do it, I don't go up to them and say, what's wrong, like other workshop leaders do. Oh, great, you're taking care of yourself. Come in when you're ready. Because that sense of permission and safety is essential for people to open. And so there's no pushing. It's not the vulnerability Olympics. It's like just settling in and noticing what wants to come to the surface is enough. And magic happens. Yeah.
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 I imagine, based off what you're sharing and based off what I know, there's a fair amount of unlearning to
Yeah.
there's so many ways of being that we've accumulated from our culture and our families, and what you're suggesting, what you're pointing towards and inviting people into would require a lot, to leave a lot behind. There's a lot to meet in that, and I'm curious about
Yes.
that journey also as part of
Thank you.
this
Right.
space.
Thank you. In the intro, I say that this is a reorientation, which means it has to start with a disorientation. So I consciously disorient people, pull the rug out, and not nothing major, but it's like, if we're really going to drop into a new place, we have to let go of what we think we know, and drop into uncertainty as a gift, as a doorway, rather than something we have to get rid of. Because certainty, at least the way I'm seeing it, is a limitation. It's a way of, like, I would say throwing anchors into the void to try and hold on to some positionality, when life is really steering the car. And if we can step out of the way and let life move through us, what magic that is. So yeah, that's that. I mean, I name it, and that's my orientation, is to disorient before.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing thing. It's not like after the 7 days you're like, all right, it's like, it's a constant. Because if you just look at the radio stations that we tune into all the time as human beings, they're all about having it together and denying certain experiences. And so there's a little upstream swimming that has to happen ultimately, but grounded in those experiences of welcoming ourselves, it starts to get easier and easier.
Yeah. And it sounds like at the basis of that reorientation is also presence. Is that you've used this word that's really beautiful, also inner authority, this expression, authenticity, humility.
Yeah. So presence is a word that I'm ravenous to understand. I can't say that I totally understand it. In Ubud, Bali, where I live, I hear this a lot from people. I can't really be present with you because I missed breakfast. Or I can't be present with you because I had a breakup with my partner. Or I can't be present with you because I didn't sleep well. And to me, that's such a restricting way of understanding what it means to be alive. Because we can be present with the noises in our heads. We don't have to get rid of the noise in order to be present. So I'm talking to you now, and I'm aware of, there's going to be noise. Is the camera working? The internet went a little weak, and all this is happening. Does that mean that that I'm not present because I'm noticing these things? No, I can notice all the noises, all the stories, and be with myself in real time. And it seems obvious in a certain way, but it's kind of radical. That presence is not necessarily the arched back, the full lotus, the Zen pond where there's no ripples. It can be stormy. And so we focus on that a lot. What does it mean to be present? And what's our story about what it means to be present? And where do we compare ourselves to an ideal of what it means to be present? Because when we compare ourselves, we either fall short or we make it, but then we have to hold our breath to make sure we stay in that. Either way, it's not sustainable, and it's not relaxed. So how do we find presence in the deepest relaxation? To allow ourselves to be how we are, not how we think we're supposed to be.
And what is preventing, like, as you're holding these spaces and people are coming in and there's this unlearning and this relearning, and you're guiding people towards awakened leadership to come into, like, the mastery of their own self-knowing, and then to be able to essentially, like, transmit that. What are the pieces that people are struggling with the most that prevent them from stepping into where you're trying to guide them?
It's a great question. Just about everyone that I know, including myself, from time to time, lives in a pathological orientation. where how I am isn't good enough and I have to improve or fix something in order to be good enough, which to me is endless because there's always going to be that noise.
Yeah.
And so the reorientation is to begin to welcome those very strong radio waves that say, I'm not enough, I don't deserve love. And then to drop into the body, deeper and deeper into the awareness in the body where we already are whole. We already know ourselves to be precious, innocent, and alive and whole. And so there's this really fascinating, like up here, I'm clearly not enough. And down here, there's no issue, there's no problem, I'm just alive. And that exercising of that muscle, rather than trying to solve it here, because the mind is trying to generate problems and solutions so it has a job, we drop into, the mind is beautiful, but we drop into the body where we remember our innocence. And so where people have the biggest challenge is where they think they're supposed to have an experience that is coherently, perfectly what they think they're supposed to be. But the experiences come and go. And the state of self, the state of inner authority, as opposed to inner apology, is accessible all the time, regardless of what's happening in our pathological orientation. And so what happens is it comes up all the time as people feel safe and relaxed and start to open these patterns around, well, if only I could. And I go, well, maybe you don't have to. They're like, oh, I never looked at that. And all of a sudden, all this energy releases, and then they can start to do it on their own because there's more room to navigate. Does that make sense? As I'm speaking?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then once that shift is made, like what are some of the new ways that people are able to experience being, and what are some of the shifts that take place? What do people step into, or what starts to happen as a result of this awakened leadership?
Thank you. It's quite varied what people say. I'll first say that what I love about it is that 2 and 3 years later, people are still letting me know that it's still working them, because it's like people, honestly, Rachel, people get a taste of what it means to be unconditionally loved. And that is rare, unfortunately. And I don't know exactly how that happens, but something comes through. And the field, this is your word, but that's my word too. The field holds us, and we relax into the field, and we suddenly realize, oh my God, I'm enough. And it's deep in the experience. And so this unconditionality spills into every aspect of our lives after the retreat. And so there's an access to more joy, more energy. And then a lot of people who take my retreat are facilitators. I have people who come, they're on the road 50 weeks a year teaching, and they come and they do a thing with me. So, and I have people who have never spoken in public, and it's fine. It works for both, because the present moment is the present moment. It doesn't really matter. But people who are professional presenters, they get tips and tools. And people who are just starting out, they get roadmaps of steps they can take. But here's the key. The roadmaps are not just about, here's the steps you can do to be successful in your business. Here's the steps you can do to bring up the resistance in you in just the right dosage, that you can be stretched but not broken, but not collapsed. So you can face your fears by doing these steps in a systematic way, so that you can expand without having to go back again. And so those are part of it. And I just taught one in Thailand recently, and there were a lot of facilitators in the room. And so there was a lot of nuts and bolts. I've been training facilitators for 20 years plus. A lot of nuts and bolts about where to stand, pacing, tone, word choice, design, like all of that goes into it. And I do that regardless of who's in the room. But a lot of it is more just noticing that we're good. It's that simple, that all of me is good. And maybe, it sounds so trite, but maybe people can feel this as I'm speaking it. There's some quality of reverence that permeates the space. And I do notice that generally in just about all the retreats, by the end of day one, there's a sense of community like none I've seen, because they're all getting up in front of the room one at a time, and there's this whole, like, it's precious. And so the WhatsApp groups keep going, and I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about this too, because, there's a real big difference between leading and offering retreats that are just retreats for transformational experiences of growth or awakening, and teaching facilitators or teachers. And those are like incredibly different experiences and take an incredibly different amount of skill sets to hold and guide. And something that we've both spoken about, but that I'd love to just invite you to speak more into, because I, especially coming from your experience level and mastery and of teaching teachers, like the difference between teaching the what and the how, and to just share a little bit like some of those qualities of like where conscious classroom management meets transformational retreats, and what are those skills that are really needed.
One of the things that I'm focusing on more and more is it's from Authentic Relating. I'm one of the senior course leader of Authentic Relating International, and this idea of letting ourselves be impacted and sharing impact. So if I'm facilitating the group in the room, someone asks a question like, well, what do you do if someone does it? And so that's what I would call the what. And generally, if I answer the what, most of the time, even if I give a great answer, they're not going to be satisfied, because there's something else often going on, which is the how. And so I will slow down as a facilitator, and I'll notice what's happening in my body, in my awareness, as I listen to the question. And sometimes I'll say something like, wow, I notice I feel really tender as I hear the question, or how is it for you to ask this question, or something like that. And then, and a lot of the times we both realize it's not about the question. They just didn't know how to get into expressing their true concerns or vulnerability. They had to do it with a question about a technical thing. And then we go into what's happening in the moment. And when that gets to be received, then if the question is still alive, then I'll answer it with, well, turn left, turn right, try this, don't try that. So that's where the what and the how come together. And I'm using this language, what and how, all the time now, because it seems really simple, not easy necessarily. So that's one piece. The other piece is that I've been facilitating for so long, and I've designed this retreat, press release, intensity, and then titration, like all of it's kind of built in. And then I never really talk for more than 10 minutes. I mean, there's constantly people are doing things. Because it's experiential. And so I have people, the workshop people, the facilitators, take notes on what I'm doing. And every once in a while we pause and we have these metacognitive moments where they can ask questions and say, or I'll just say, by the way, the reason I did this was because the reason I had you all pause and connect to self and receive a breath is because of the vagus nerve, but also because when you're connecting to self, your eyes are closed and your mouth closes, and then we don't have to, then we can reset. So I give the meta around why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm modeling it the whole time. And so that's the part of the feedback I'm getting is just the modeling. They can see ways to do it, how to give directions, how not to give directions, how to own when I mess up. Oh, wow, that was my bad. Like to just own it. And to feel the embarrassment and to go, yeah, I'm really embarrassed. Here I am, this like expert facilitator, and I totally blew it. So here we like all of that is modeled ideally. And so honestly, some of my most potent, not by choice, but most where people have said this was the most potent thing is when I messed up and owned it. They're like, oh my God, you just owned that in front of the whole group. I go, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because what else are you going to do? No, I didn't mess up. It's like,
I also have this experience. I mean, I just led last year, the first year of the field facilitator training, and being the first year of anything, it's always the one where you learn. And I swear the whole year was just the learning was, how did Rachel fuck up now? And then now she's going to own it and be vulnerable again. And we're all going to go through that. And that was like one of the greatest learnings of the whole journey, was just me continuing to be like, yeah, that didn't go as planned. And here's where I could have done differently, or here's where I stepped out of my power, or here's where, and it's like the permission that
Yes.
that as leaders or space holders, that we don't have to get it all right all the time.
Amen.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
came up in anticipation of this call. It's
Mm.
happening to me more and more, is this, I get nervous or uptight about, well, how am I going to be my best self, and then I remember that life is steering the car, and I'm not, my
Mm.
steering wheel is not attached. It's like, this is throwing,
Mm.
and it's so relaxing. It's like, it's not up to me.
Mm.
I mean, I suppose if there's a skill set, it's learning how to step out of the way and allow this kind of greater presence or field to take, to guide.
Yeah.
So I don't, so, and one of my, this is kind of, it's actually connected to this. One of my biggest passions as a facilitator is how to facilitate without having to recover. How to coach, how to do one-on-one sessions, how to teach 7 days or 20 days in a row without having to spend 3 weeks recovering. And I'm onto something. I'm learning some really cool things that I share in my retreat about, I call it holding space without holding, breathing into the different parts of the body. Like, there's different ways that I'm discovering. I can teach a 7-day retreat, 12, even sometimes 12-hour days. And like, after it's over, in the morning, I'm a little tired and then I'm good. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what's for lunch? It's like, I'm learning that, because if it's not sustainable, there's something missing. There's something I'm
Yeah.
doing that I want to shift. So I'm thinking that's sustainable. Yeah, go ahead.
I want you to speak more into this, because this is a huge topic and theme right now. I mean, it comes in a variety of colors, but for sure for space holders to understand how to hold space. I would love to hear more how to hold space without holding, but so many are just in this, they just collapse after. And it's just
Right.
weeks of recovery to just do it all again.
Sure.
And I imagine there's a kind of PTSD that also starts to
Mm-hmm.
accumulate from that.
Yeah.
But as well, participants have the same. Participants are doing a different direction
road.
of the work that they're diving into, but also with weeks of recovery time. So I would love to invite you to share a little bit more about what you're learning on that journey.
Sure, I'll share a little bit. One of the reasons why facilitators have to recover is because while they're facilitating, they're resisting certain self-judgments. I'm a bad facilitator, or I'm incompetent, or I'm going to fail, or nobody likes me, or this is too hard, or I'm not prepared, or like, there's so many.
Mm-hmm.
And when we resist those judgments, they're not really conscious, they're unconscious. And so we kind of push against them and prop ourselves up. And there's so much energy used to prop ourselves up that when we're finally not on stage, we collapse. And so that's part of it. Part of it is to bring real-time awareness to the noises that are generally unconscious, and to welcome them. To welcome them, it's like the other day I was running a circle, and someone said, I didn't call on him right away, and then I called on him later and said, well, I forgot what I was going to say because you took so long. And I went like this: bad facilitator, bad facilitator. I'm a bad facilitator. And everybody cracked up, and then and then someone else said, I'm feeling bored. I go, oh my God, bad facilitator again. And everybody, it was like, just to own it, it's like in real time, because that's part of it's in my head, of course, who doesn't have that noise. So part of it is simply embracing, and this is a bigger piece that might not make sense in a quick podcast, but I ask myself, if these judgments of myself, whatever they are, are true, if they're true about me, can I still love myself? And what I mean by love myself is, can I be kind? Can I breathe in tenderness? I'm going to cry here. Can I bring in tenderness to those spaces, even if it's true? Like, if I'm a bad facilitator, or if I'm mean or unconscious, or all the things that I've resisted in my life. So this is something I do all the time, just in my personal life. If this is true, can I still welcome myself? And the answer is always yes, because love is unconditional, and these are conditions that can be loved. It's not always immediate, but that orientation is so relaxing. Oh yeah, so I'm resisting this. Well, I don't have to resist it. Let me notice what it's like. This is what you do when you're vulnerable on stage. You're embracing the Rachel that you maybe didn't want to show in it, but you've done it enough that it's like, okay, here we go again. I get to expose myself again. This is kind of cool, as opposed to this is something I should dread. And it takes some practice. So one of the answers to your question about sustainability is to become aware of the self-judgments that we're resisting. I mean, I remember when I first started teaching teachers, I think I'm pretty funny, right? And I would tell jokes and no one would laugh. And I would just collapse. I go, nobody laughed. I'm bad. Right? But then I recovered because I remembered in my heart, I know I'm funny.
I've had that experience.
But literally,
too.
right. But literally, like, anything would, like, it used to be like I'd raise the wrong eyebrow the wrong way. It would take me 3 days of like shame spiral to recover. And now, if that happens, oftentimes in one breath, I go, oh wow, look at that. Came down with a case of human once again. And then I'm here. And then I may mention it later to the group. I may not. It's not that important.
I want to ask another question about this because there's a few layers that I have working inside of me around this. It's a very close topic to my own facilitation. So one is, like, I'm imagining for some people, like, let's just say someone who's listening, who's like a facilitator, and maybe they're new or just starting out, and they're like, okay, so the next time I realize that I want to start to share it, but maybe sharing it to the whole group is too much. Is it enough as a practice to maybe share it with their co-facilitator or their team? Like, does that have the same impact as sharing it to the whole group?
This is a question I get asked a lot. And when I was training new school teachers on their first day, they would say, should I tell the kids how nervous I am? And I said, no, not initially. First, get them to buy into your system.
Yeah.
And then when you feel confident in inner authority, you can share that you've been nervous.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example, Rachel. So from inner apology, I want to say that I've been really, really nervous today. And I wanted to tell you that in the spirit of authenticity. Okay. I'm really nervous. Okay. So when I do that, like, everybody gets nervous, right? Who's driving the car? Who's running the ship? It's like, well, what do we, if I do that at a conference where there's breakout sessions, and then in a breakout session, people are texting their friends going, do you got something good? Because this guy's no guy. I got to get out of here. Right?
Yeah.
But if I do it from inner authority, which can take a little time if I'm a new facilitator, but not years, just an hour. So I just want to say that this morning when we started, I was so nervous. And I was like literally like shaking. And the good news is that this happens to me like every time I teach, which is true. And I've been successful as a facilitator, and I've been nervous. So if I'm not nervous before I start, I get nervous that something's wrong, and then I'm nervous and it works. Right? So, but the way that the inner authorities, I was really nervous. This happened in a retreat I just taught recently. That a woman was getting up in front of the room doing her 3-minute solo speech, and she was talking about how she thought that the piece that we did on death was just bullshit. She said, "Oh, it was just bullshit," and I'm like, and I laughed because it was funny, it was engaging, and I just felt it, and there was a little bit of like a little worm in my heart, or my gut, and I let it sit there, and then we took the break, and I talked to her, and I thanked her. I said, "I love that you said that because your authenticity is more important than my experience as a facilitator, all that." And then we got back as a group, and I said, I just want to say that when she said bullshit, I had these two experiences. One is, hallelujah, she's speaking her truth. I was excited. I was thrilled, and then, oh my God, I've been labeled a bullshit artist. I feel small. And I said this to the group, but I said, and it took me 20 minutes to receive this so that I can say this to you from inner authority, and it's not a big deal. But if I had said it right after she did her speech, there could have been blame or shame and I had to receive it fully as a gift before. So it's the difference between speaking it from inner apology and speaking it from inner authority. And so to answer your question, you never need to say it. There's no need, but sometimes it's appropriate to say to the group and sometimes it's not. But it's usually once I've received the innocence of the experience, then I can name it to the group and it becomes a teaching moment. Occasionally, you can't do that. Occasionally you're in the inner apology and it's messier, but you can find your way through. Yeah. But that's the idea. So it's about what serves people is you as a facilitator slowing down and welcoming all your parts.
Mm.
And then as you do that, if the impulse says share it to the group or share it to a co-facilitator.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're just starting out, share it to a co-facilitator first and then see how it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the ways that I name this, and it's interesting, I'm trying to try on I love how we all speak to very similar things, but we use different words.
Sure.
And one of the ways I say this is, if I can't hold myself, if I'm not holding the little one that had that experience, I won't share it. It's, and I think that is, it's another way of saying this inner authority. It's like, can I hold myself and hold that little one, versus what I've seen other people do really painfully wrong is, this is too much for me to hold it for me.
Let me have the room hold it. Let me have the room hold it. Right.
Yeah,
right.
You guys hold it because I can't hold this because I feel too worthless or too small or it's too overwhelming. I need someone else to hold it for me. And that's what you don't want to do. That would be the inner, I guess the inner apology of getting the room to hold your stuff that you can't hold for yourself.
Yeah, it's disempowering for you, and it's also disempowering for the room because that's not their job. Their job is not to hold you. Their job is to be students.
Right.
And to be themselves. So it disempowers for sure. I wanted to say one more thing to your question. You may take a breath. That's nice. So this is a little shorthand version, but there's this idea of what it means to hold space, which the language itself is very odd to me. We are holding space. We are gripping space. Like, what if instead of holding space, we let the space hold us? What if we let the space hold us? And that's a profound shift. I call it conscious laziness and conscious selfishness as a facilitator. Like, to track our own pleasure, because if the room is our body, then what our pleasure is serves the room, serves the body. And so it's not about holding space. It's about letting it move. And I remember an example, one of my earlier retreats, there were 3 people on the retreat. There was like a love triangle. There was a lot of drama, and I'm sure you've never seen that. Right. And so at the first break, this woman comes up and can I talk to you? I go, sure. She tells me what's going on. And I go, well, thank you. Thanks for telling me. Is there anything else you want to share? No. Okay. Thanks. I didn't offer suggestions. I didn't offer solutions. I just listened. Next break, next person, same thing. Third break, third person. And I just simply said, thank you. Is there anything that you need? So, no. And you know what? They all were so grateful. And I learned something profound. Like, I didn't have to hold them. I could just be myself. And they felt a grace in being able to be received by someone, but I wasn't doing anything. The less I do, the more they felt received. And so this is what it means to me to be holding space without holding. Let the space hold me. Let life steer the car. And let me get out of the way and allow the intelligence to come through. And so it's a process to learn to trust my impulses, all of that.
Yeah. Traditionally, the people who are the facilitators are the caretakers. They're the best caretakers, the ones who've been trained by their parents, by their upbringing, are the ones who end up stepping into this role because they're really good at it. I'm really good at it.
Yeah, me too. Or I was. I don't do it so much anymore, but it's a challenge.
Totally.
Sure.
Totally. You know what really helped me was becoming a parent. As soon as I had a child to hold, I was like, fuck that. I'm not holding anyone else anymore. That really made that shift for me. I was like, I actually have a kid. You're not my children. I'm done. And that shift for me, I mean, it happened through parenting, but it was one of the greatest gifts to my facilitation was to actually stop trying to hold everyone.
Right on. I think that's a good suggestion for all the facilitators out there, is to have a child.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually.
Or 2, have 5 children. Have 5.
It is facilitation boot camp for sure. For sure. The greatest gift.
So I'm really enjoying this. We've talked a little bit in the last 6 to 8 months, but there was a big gap.
Yeah.
And I love, there's a kind of a quality of geeking out on facilitation, but there's also like a sense of connection and heart that I
Mm.
treasure.
Mm.
So that something is shifting even as I say this.
Mm.
Like there's been this subtle sense of I'm speaking to some third person, some audience out there,
Yeah.
you know, and saying this is like, audience, nah. It's like I'm starting to settle, actually.
Thank you for naming that. I've felt really sweetly connected to my heart in this conversation, and one of the
Yeah.
ways that's showing up right now, which I'm not aware of any stories of why, is like there's like, how to say, the space around and behind my eyes feels lubricated. It's as if
Nice.
in any moment I could cry, but I'm not like
Right.
emotional or crying. It's just like there's a
Right.
tenderness that I have that I'm connected to, but that I'm not consumed by.
It's
It's
beautiful.
felt really
It's
sweet.
beautiful. Nice.
Yeah.
I want to share something that just arose.
Mm.
My website is called The Tender Edge.
Hmm.
And the tender edge is, I mean, I say this in every workshop I do, like, raise your hand if you want to expand your comfort zone. And everybody raises their hand. And I said, we don't always realize that to expand our comfort zone means we're going to be uncomfortable, for at least for a period of time. So the tender edge is 1 foot in safety and 1 foot into the mystery.
Mm.
And if we put both feet into, if we just jump with both feet, our nervous systems usually can't take it and we come back into a shutdown. But if we
Mm.
don't take any risk, we can feel isolated and bored.
Mm.
And so the tender edge is that sweet spot where we feel safe and we're also stepping into the unknown and
Yeah.
trying on new stuff. And
Yeah.
that's the sweet spot
Yeah.
where we don't have to recover afterwards, but we don't
Mm.
have to hide.
Mm.
And ideally, there's no vulnerability hangover, but it does happen for sure from time to time.
Yeah.
But I'm not pushing
Yeah.
for sure, because it doesn't, there's nowhere to go.
Mm.
It's tricky. It's that paradox. Like the
Mm.
Ram Dass quote, the world is perfect just the way it is,
Mm.
including my desire to change it. It's like, so how do we navigate that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to
Yeah.
just circle back, but just to make sure we're complete, because I had asked you for like how to not collapse into exhaustion as a facilitator or leader after holding space, and you gave this very beautiful invitation to stop
Sure.
holding it all and start to actually reveal your experience, and that the release
Mm-hmm.
of that
Right.
holding and the energy that it takes will let go of some of that exhaustion. And I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
circle in and say, are there any other pieces that you'd like to offer, any other tips, strategies, or things
Mm-hmm.
that people can start to
Sure.
lean into to avoid that after
Sure.
retreat space collapse?
Well, there's a lot, and a lot of it is kind of woven into the whole retreat experience. But one thing I'll mention is I call it brain compatible teaching strategies. It's
Mm.
teaching according to the way the brain learns. And the
Mm.
basic essence of it is that when you're teaching, when you're speaking, every so often pause and give participants a chance to engage actively with the material. Mostly it's they're talking to a partner. It could be
Yeah.
they're journaling or drawing, and sometimes it's just 2 minutes. So I'll model this. I'll say, okay, so today we focused on making friends with the noises in our heads, or today we focused on making friends with money. Turn to a partner and just spend 2 minutes back and forth, share 1, 2, or 3 highlights of today's class. And
Mm-hmm.
so now they're talking to each other. And then I ring the chime, they come back, and I say, so what you just did is a brain compatible teaching strategy, because we tend to remember 10% of what we hear, 50% of what we see, and up to 90% of what we teach. And when you're talking to each other about highlights, you're teaching. So the retention soars. And I said, but
Wow.
what's most important about this is, what do you as the facilitator do when the people are taking their 2 minutes? Answer, anything you want to. It's a mini vacation. So people are doing their 2 minutes and I'm checking my notes. I'm feeling my feet on the ground because I often forget that I have feet. I'm breathing. I'm slowing down. I'm like, wow, this is working. I'm settling. And then I go back
Mm.
in. So it's the
Mm.
break is great for the participants to learn, but it's even more potent for the facilitator to relax and get his or her sea legs and then continue.
Beautiful.
And in the teaching, I share how long the gaps are and how long you should teach before you take those gaps. And I mean, I teach a workshop to school teachers called 50 Ways to Leave Your Lecture, like how to break up direct instruction. And there's dozens and dozens. And I give, in the retreat, I might give 10 or 12, the key ones that you teach it for 20 years, maybe you want another one, but you don't need more than a few. But just how to break it up so that the participants are actively learning and you're not engaged. And so I used to do keynote speeches, like 1,000 people for school teachers, an hour and a half. And I'd pause every 6 or 7 minutes. And I'll find a partner and share, and then I ring the chime, they come back. And my experience was if I did a great keynote, whatever that means, and I didn't pause, people would walk out, turn to each other, well, that was a great keynote. What did you learn? I don't know, but it was great. But if I pause and give them a chance to engage, they walk out going, well, that was really good. What did you learn? A lot of things, let me tell you, because as soon as it's shared, they get to share, they get to work it, they get to work with it. So there's a lot of profound possibilities with the way that we choose to the design of the facilitation that gives us relaxation and gives the participants more learning and more empowerment. So that's an example of that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Really good ones. I find people really struggle to give themselves the permission to slow down, to take pauses, to not feel that performative pressure. Everyone's watching. I have to keep going and keep delivering. And there's a tension that comes. And I just love that. Just like that permission to give the space for the integration and the harvest and the sharing. It's like, it's okay. It's actually really needed. You're not doing anything wrong. Yeah.
One of the things I do in my work, it comes originally from, well, half of it comes from authentic relating, but it's called connect to self. So 2 people are partnering and it's a 2-minute thing, and then they're going to do something else, but there's a new question and prompt. I'll ring the chime. I'll say, okay, take a moment, come into silence, connect to self. So their soft eyes are closed eyes and they feel their feet on the ground. And I say, let's receive a breath together. And they all receive a breath, a little sound, and the nervous system settles. So, okay, now open your eyes. Here's the next question. And I do this very consistently because the breath, I mean, you teach this, the breath, it's the most efficient co-regulation I know.
Yeah.
In like in one breath, everything kind of settles. And so we do this quite often when I'm facilitating. And again, what I don't always mention is that I'm doing it too. They're connecting to self. I'm connecting to myself. I'm breathing. I'm relaxing my nervous system. I'm massaging the vagus nerve with the sound on my exhale. So this is the part of my self-care as a facilitator, is when the group is breathing, I'm breathing.
Yeah.
And one of my, this is a cheat that I do. Okay, when I talk about conscious laziness and conscious selfishness as a facilitator, again, if the room is my body, what does the body want? If I need a breath, I'm assuming the room needs a breath. Okay, everybody, let's receive a breath, and it's like, they don't mind. And I'm like, oh, that was a good move. And it's often the case.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a way of erasing the board or starting new, pressing reset. And so if I need that, I'm betting that it's going to serve the room. So it's a tricky thing. And people can be like, well, that's kind of selfish. Yeah, in a certain sense, but it's also listening into what the impulse is.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah.
But these are like techniques and ways to come back to myself as a facilitator when I'm noticing, because it's the pressure. It's also the shame spiral. Oh, I didn't answer that question properly, And when I take that pause, I can say, before we continue, I just want to say a couple minutes ago, there was a question and I'm not really satisfied with the way I answered it. So I'd like to go back and answer it again.
Yeah.
And I can do that because I took 30 seconds while they're breathing and connecting to self to realize, oh yeah, I can do this. And so as I slow down, solutions arise.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I would love to make a little gear shift as we come into the home stretch, because there's a topic I think that is really important. And I think you might have some beautiful pieces to add, which is that one of the things that we start to notice as facilitators, that
Mhm.
this craft of facilitation, as you said earlier, like facilitation and leadership are the same thing. We become these great leaders and teachers, and with
Mhm.
that comes an inherent power.
Mhm.
And in the wrong hands, that power becomes misused, and in the right hands, that power spreads, and more people
Mhm.
become
Yeah.
empowered. But I just love to speak about the, hierarchy, pedestalization, and the
Sure.
power of the microphone, and how to not take advantage of that power that we
Sure.
that we continue to grow as leaders and facilitators.
Thank you. Did you get that phrase, "power of the microphone," from me?
I did.
Oh, good, because I use it a lot.
Yeah, I
Um,
got it from you.
oh, good. I thought maybe we just maybe I got it from you years ago.
No,
Um,
no, no, no.
s- okay, so in my retreats, we spend anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. There's a piece I call "The Power of the Microphone." We talk about the inherent power dynamic or power imbalance when we're facilitating, and I give examples from really dark, not just facilitation, but like, for example, how the Nestle's corporation had actresses put on nurses' uniforms to sell baby formula in South America because nurses are looked up to, and like all this crazy shit that corporations have done and experiments have been done where when people who are in positions of power are become abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it in tantra workshops where the facilitators are wanting to have sex with the students, and I've spoken up against it, and it's been an issue for sure. So I name
Mm-hmm.
all this, and I said it's not just sex with clients. It's also has to do with all the isms, like I'm a white man, and there's a whole thing that goes along with that. At least where I'm teaching in Bali or in the U.S., it's a thing, and so we name that. And then just there's a phrase I learned when I was teaching teachers or being a teacher when we were focusing on racism, which is we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an excuse. It's an opportunity to be curious and to ask. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me know where you feel and I'm gonna, it's like there's a humility in teaching that to me is the reward of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what I most love is the humility because it opens my heart. It opens me to my core. It doesn't mean I don't have blind spots and I'm, because look, you make 1,000 decisions,
Yeah.
in a day. And sometimes someone was wishing you made a different decision and they're feeling squelched or like all of this is part of the dance. But leaning into deep listening and welcoming where I don't know and where I can learn is is profound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big piece of it. I
Mm-hmm.
want to say one more thing. Even as I say this, I feel kind of nervous about it because it's such a big field, it's such a big topic. Therapists consciously do this. They use their power to allow the client to relax and go deeper. And so there is a way that we can consciously do that, but it's best that it's conscious because if it's unconscious, then in the wrong hands. And the key with leadership, it's not impressing people how good you are as a leader. It's imbibing in them how good they are as leaders. And so it's a very different focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if it's not, it's like I'm in service. And I have this, it's a long story which I won't tell, but I don't have any slack in my life to perform on stage. If I go into performance, it's like someone's kicked me in the gut and it's like almost instantaneous. So for years it was brutal and now it's wonderful because I have this kind of direct feedback mechanism. Oh, I was glossing over. Let me slow down and feel what's here. Super different.
I'm really in the silence appreciating you from where you're sitting and how you're holding yourself and the reality that you're inviting us into. I just want to say thank you so much for gifting us this time and being here. And there's so much more to deepen from here. And I'm really honored to get to host you. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun this summer. And so I'm
looking
really
forward to it.
excited. Really, really, really
Me too.
excited.
And I'm nervous because I get nervous, but I'm also really excited.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something is coming through that is just more efficient, more deep. There's a field that I'm so excited about it, and I have no agenda. I'm going to show up, and I don't know what we're going to do, but it's going to be beautiful.
Yay.
Like, I love that.
Your website is thetenderedge.com. Is there anything else you'd like to share or invite people into as a way to find you? Or
I would invite people, if they want to go to my blog page on the website and just look at stuff, because it's all about welcoming our human. There's a blog called Hopelessly Insecure. There's one called Rejection as a Doorway. One called In Celebration of Neediness. And then there's the video Holding Space Without Holding. It's all about welcoming with breath and kindness and attention the parts of ourselves that are yearning to be loved. Because I mean, the theme of my website is love is unconditional. Life gives us conditions so we can love them. And so it's very simple, not always easy, but very simple. We bring the conditions of our life to the unconditionality in our body, in our consciousness, and we see magic unfold. And so if people are interested in, if they're having particular challenges around any experience, check out the blogs.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you
I
for
think
that.
the rest is good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick Smith. And thank you for listening to this third episode of In Presence We Trust. It's worth noting here that I'm hosting Rick next month in the UK, August 2024, for a very special Awakened Leadership Retreat. Check out my website for more information. For episode 4, I am going to be joined by a very special being, Pamela von Sabiar. In our talk, Pamela emphasizes the need for embodiment in leadership, and she shares into her belief that the future of leadership involves facilitating a shift towards a generative and regenerative society. Thank you again for joining me as we continue the journey and open up this new communal space and learning environment that is In Presence We Trust. You can subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to like and comment. Until next time, deep breath.